Rick says that this training will be harsher than anything Angelica can even imagine, but she tells them not to hold back. Angelica is shocked, though, when Rick puts some weights on her. Rick just tells her to remember her strengthening magic so she doesn't end up dying, but Angelica wishes he would explain the training to her first. Rick ignores her pleas and just drags her along as he runs. Angelica freaks out as she has no idea what's going on, so Rick explains that she can get her body used to fast movement by getting pulled by someone faster. Angelica has some really good acceleration, but her problem is that she loses her stability after that. Angelica begs him to stop for a moment, but Rick declares that the key to rapid improvement is to kick it up a notch when you think you're at your limit. Rick assures her that it won't be so bad because there are only 6 more hours left of this. When it's over, Angelica can't believe that her legs are still attached to her body because she thought they fell off a long time ago. Rick went through the same exact training, and he even died 3 times on his first day. Angelica's proud to have survived, but Rick reveals that they still have afternoon training coming up after a short lunch break. Angelica begs for it to be over, but Rick seems to have selective hearing as he just says that they will meet again in an hour. After 5 more days of training, Angelica convinces herself that she didn't run away from training and she just made a tactical retreat to protect her mental health. She is confident that Rick won't find her, but she is very wrong. Rick looked for her all over the country, but Angelica is shocked because it's only been 15 minutes since she ran away. Rick surprisingly understands why she ran away because he did the same thing during his 2 years of training. He ran away dozens of times, but he also died tens of thousands of times too. One time, Alisara even had to share her mana with Boston so he could revive Rick another 2,000 times. This meant a lot more training and dying, so Rick had to get used to it. Rick was on the verge of giving up several times, but Bronson always gave him words of encouragement. He told him to compare the regret he would feel if he gave up versus his current suffering. The weight of giving up was always heavier, so he kept going. Angelica then describes all the things she hates about being a noble. Because of all those things, she decided to contribute to her family as someone who fights and not a noble lady. This is why she dreams of becoming the first special class woman knight. Angelica doesn't want to feel the weight of regret either, so she's once again ready to train. Angelica's better suited to using a sword, but the tournament doesn't allow weapons. Because of this, Rick thinks it would be best to teach her techniques that turn her hands into a sword. To do this, Rick has invited Ronette to join their training. A while later, it's time for the last match between the top spots of BLSE. This is Angelica's fight, but she's growling like a wild beast for some reason. The audience knows that Angelica's elegant fighting style won't work against this specific opponent, but there's something different about her. The fight begins, and everyone is shocked to see her attack like a brute, and she instantly wins. Rick is pleased with the results of the training, but Angelica seems to be in some sort of trance afterwards. Mead returns after following a lead about one of the other orbs. Unfortunately, it led to nothing. Mizet then tries to get fresh with the waitress, but he just gets rejected. That night, Ron explains to Mezet that they will get another orb if they win the tournament. Alcar wants to join the tournament as well, but Rick fears that she would destroy the entire place if she did. Rick explains means that he's been training Angelica, but she's disappointed because there isn't enough time for her to train more. Everyone encourages her, and they point out that even a little training will help drastically. Alice has no clue what they are talking about, but she still tells everyone to do their best. After everyone gives their words of encouragement, Angelica is ready to give her all. The next day, the Fist King tournament begins. The first matches are announced, and we get a look at who Rick, Angelica, and Geese are fighting. Rick is just glad that he doesn't have to face Brune because if he did, then he would just give up. Ross's opponent is some fish-looking guy, and Braun's bald friend cheers him on. Kelvin is there as well, but someone in the audience is worried about his condition. Cyclops isn't worried, though, because he is sure that Kelvin will win no matter what condition he's in. The audience begins to make bets on who will win, but Angelica has noticed something. Geis was placed in the bracket in a spot where he won't have to face Brass or Kelvin until the final. The match fixing has already begun because Geese will be able to avoid tough opponents. It's clear to Angelica that they are going to make Geese look super strong to the crowd, and when the odds against them are high, Snape will bet on his opponent. Geese will then throw the match and lose so Snape can obtain a grand fortune. Angelica will meet him in the second round, though, so she is determined to ruin their plan. A little later, Coven says that he's happy to see Bronson and Rick at the tournament. Ron reminds him that they're there for the belt, and they all look forward to facing each other. Cyclops points out that Kelvin has the look of a challenger now, and he's glad because it reminds him of how Kelvin looked a long time ago. He's talking about when he first brought Kelvin to his gym, and Cyclops boasted about having a fighter from his gym reach the top 4 in the tournament. Kelvin was allowed to fight this guy, and he wondered if he was also allowed to end his life. That's, of course, against the rules, just like using a weapon, but those are the only rules. Kelvin confidently told the guy not to get upset after losing, but Kelvin ended up being the one on the ground. Kelvin lost, but his extremely high potential was obvious, even though he had never been trained before. Kelvin changed after his first defeat as he trained harder so he could grasp victory. He began looking forward to losing to even stronger opponents because he would then just train even more. This was the life Kelvin always wanted, and his endless training led to him shocking the world. Kelvin ended up decimating the champion in his first tournament. It's been 6 years since then, but Cyclops is glad to see Kelvin's spirit burning once again. Soon, the first match of the tournament begins, but Geese's opponent isn't able to do anything to him. The opponent demands that he take the fight seriously, but Geese just shocks everyone with the amount of power he can generate with a single swing. The opponent doesn't give up and launches a barrage of attacks at an insane speed, but Geese just becomes more annoyed. Geese attacks again, but he unintentionally hits the guy and knocks him out cold. He is announced the winner, and everyone wonders if there has ever been a sponsored fighter this strong. It's clear that he's very strong, but Rick thinks something is strange. Even with all of Geese's power and toughness, his movements are of a complete amateur. Unfortunately, Geese still won easily, and he left quite the impression on the crowd. The tournament continues, and our heroes win all their fights. The last match of the first round is Kelvin's, and our heroes are eager to finally see what he can do. Kelvin attacks with incredible speed, and Rick says that it's like he knew exactly what his opponent was going to do. Rawson explains just how crazy Kelvin really is as he's able to sense changes and electrical signals and adrenaline among other things just by smelling them. They agree that he's an incredible fighter, but the crowd is shocked as Kelvin gets knocked to the ground. Rick is then the one to be shocked as the others explain that Kelvin let himself get hit. The crowd cheers for Kelvin, so he gets up and quickly knocks out his opponent. Kelvin is announced the winner, but his friends think he plays around too much. The second round begins the next day, and Snape arrives to take a seat next to Rick. Snape introduces himself to the others, but Lysette wonders why the lizard is putting on a nice guy act. Rick wonders why he isn't sitting in the VIP seats, so Snape explains that this next fight is incredibly important. It's a fight between his brother and his fiancée, so he needs to see it up close in the halls. Geese thinks about how he drank too much the night before, and he runs into Angelica. Geese has to be reminded about who she is, and he explains that Snape told him not to damage her face so she can look good at their wedding. Angelica is eager to show him the results of her hard work, but he mocks her and says that no amount of training can make up for the gap in their power. Angelica is sure that he has trained hard as well because of his physique, but Geese says that he doesn't do any training. He just lives his normal life, and his body ended up this way. Geese calls himself a natural boring talent, and he recommends that Angelica just stand still during their fight. That way, he can make sure that he doesn't punch her stomach so she can still bear Snape's children. This, of course, infuriates Angelica, so she vows to destroy him. Their match begins as the crowd goes crazy, but Angelica is stunned when her first attack does nothing to Geese. She manages to dodge his attack, but once again, her attack does nothing to Geese despite landing a direct hit. Angelica knew she wouldn't be able to hurt Geese with her basic attacks, so she does something that surprises Snape all the way up in the stands. She removes her strengthening magic, so Geese wonders what she's planning to do. Brionette cheers her on, and Angelica uses mana or reflex inversion. Geese tells her to just give up, but she uses her new thread slicer attack, and she manages to cut Geese. Everyone cheers her on, and Angelica wonders who Geese was calling a small fry.